All right, so I got another story for you guys. Uh, my new subscribers and an old friend asked me. She checked out a couple of the other stories and asked me to tell the story about the horse. So I'm going to tell you about the time some guy who's hammered on the back of a horse and passed out, almost creamed my partner and I, and ended up getting thrown from the horse. And there's a helicopter and a bunch of other crazy kind of fun stuff. So stick around for the story. If you like my videos, please hit subscribe and ring the little bell so that you get notifications and can watch breakdowns and podcasts and all that good stuff. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get to the story now. I did a little diagram. I can't draw or anything, but I wanted to be able to sort of, show where everything was. So this is the street here. This is like the house. This is the backyard, which is like there's a little gate here, and there's like a horse pen back here, and then these are vehicles. So there were like 6 vehicles in the driveway, like all trucks and SUVs. And it's like this really huge driveway, and it was in the middle of a city, but um, there's like it was a decent sized property. It was like half an acre, and they have obviously room for a horse in the middle of a major American city is unusual, but it wasn't like a fancy house. It was like a kind of a not particularly nice house and not a particularly nice neighborhood. But back in the 50s, they had decided to put a couple little horse properties back there, and these cowboys lived out there. Anyway, so my partner and I were working. It's like a Saturday night, and there's a call of a shots fired at this house that there's a party there and someone's cranking off some rounds. And it's not unusual in this neighborhood where I was working. So we start driving over to the house, and as we're rolling in, there's cars leaving because it's a party breaking up, and we're keeping an eye out for something that really catches our attention. But we're going to be one of the first units in, so our job is to go in and make sure everyone's safe. But we're keeping an eye out. We see cars leaving, and you can hear the helicopter start coming up overhead on the radio, and then all of a sudden, we're driving in westbound along this street here, and as we're driving down the road towards the house, a little bit of maybe like a quarter of a mile away, all of a sudden this like guy on the back of a horse just comes hauling ass past our patrol car and takes off into the night. And so I clear on the radio and I'm like, hey, there's a guy on horseback, 510 franc, which is like hauling ass, the radio code for hauling ass, down the road on a horse. And the air unit, you can hear them clear, and they clear back on the air, like, okay, yeah, there's a guy on a horse leaving at a high rate of speed, and you can hear them sort of laughing. They're acknowledging that they heard us, and you can hear them laughing in the helicopter because it's an unusual thing to have a horse fleeing from you in the middle of a city. It's not a common thing, I don't think. Not in 2000 and whatever year this was, early 2000, like it was like 2009, 10. Anyway, so we keep rolling in, and we arrive at the house, and there's a couple officers are arriving, and people have left, and no one's shot. I think there's some brass laying on the ground out in the driveway, and I think just some people had too much to drink, and somebody whipped out their pistol and cranked off some rounds in the air just to let everyone know this was a real party, which was kind of like par for the course on a Saturday night. It's like a lot of calls like this, parties breaking up with people shooting guns, and this is out in Arizona, so it's like the Wild West. And as we roll in, and my partner and I, we make our way into the back, and you could walk between the trucks and SUVs, or you could like sort of walk this way, but it was more narrow and you could barely make it. Here's a little more room here, so we walk between the SUVs and trucks, make our way into the backyard, and talking to some folks, and there's like a shed, I think, and we clear it to make sure there's no one in there and there's no dead bodies from the gunshots or anything like that. And we can hear the helicopter on the radio. They've checked in the area for vehicles, and there's nothing seems to be going on, and they're sort of letting us know they're going to take off. And so I start walking out, and as I turn here, I can hear the helicopter clear on the radio and say, "Watch out, officers! Watch out! There's a horse." And as I'm looking ahead, I see like a guy holding a flashlight on the back of a horse, and he's just hauling ass coming towards him. He comes between the vehicles and the horse, and it's the guy's like sort of slumped over, like he's passed out. He's got like a big cowboy hat, and he's got a big bottle of Miller Genuine Draft, a 40-ouncer in one hand and a flashlight in the other, and he's holding on to his reins, and he's like passed out and coming through with that. I think the horse just wants to go into the yard and have some oats and chill. Like, that's what horses want to do, right? Not get chased by the cops with some drunk guy on your back. That's no fun for anybody, except maybe like the drunk guy, although it doesn't sound very fun to me. So I actually pulled my gun out because I didn't know what to do, and then I dove. I think I sort of thought about shooting it for a minute. I don't know if that probably wouldn't have done anything, and except maybe get me in trouble and feel bad for doing it later. But I kind of dived between these vehicles. I didn't shoot, and I didn't shoot the horse. Unhorsing a man with a gun would have been pretty, interesting story, a way better story than this. Anyway, I dove between these vehicles, and he whips through here and into the backyard, and all I can hear is the air unit, the helicopter, and you clear on the radio, and you hear the helicopter in the back, and he goes, "Oh, he just 962'd into the fence." And 962 is like the radio code for an accident with injuries, because he like the horse rammed into the fence and threw the guy from the horse, and the horse started flying around the yard, and then one of our farm boy officers, someone who grew up on a farm, I think, must have knew about horses. I don't know anything about horses. They seem nice, but I don't know how to corral a horse. That was not something they taught me at the police academy or anything. But this guy knew how to do it, so he got a hold of the horse and got it in the pen, and then they went over to get the guy who was passed out on the horse. Getting thrown from a horse into a fence wakes you up, and he starts flailing around, and the officers are trying to get him into custody, and he's got spurs on, so you can hear like one of the people is like worried about the spurs because he's kicking these spurs around. It was my partner, actually. This guy's flailing around with his spurs and his cowboy hat, which is still on. I don't know how he kept the hat on, but it stayed on, I think, the whole time, which is pretty remarkable given apparently he took and he was pretty jacked up too. He got roughed up, or maybe he put the hat on before I saw he had a chance. Maybe just dedicated, I don't know. So he gets all jacked up. He ends up going to the hospital, spending the night in the hospital, and everything else was good, but it was interesting to have a horse show up like that. Anyway, that's the horse story. So if you enjoy the stories, if you like the breakdowns, the podcast, please subscribe so that I can make sure you get to check them all out. And thanks again for coming by. And if you have an idea or you want to request or anything, just please reach out via Twitter or in the comments below. Thanks.